There's something happening to you that no one has told you about. Perhaps your real issue isn't a lack of discipline, but rather an excess of effort in the wrong place. It sounds absurd, I know. How can someone who tries so hard get nowhere? But what if I told you that a large part of what's holding you back isn't your willpower, but rather your brain trying to protect you in the wrong way? Think for a second. How many times have you made decisions that seemed logical at night, only for them to simply vanish the next day? That's what we're about to unlock today. When you feel like your life is stuck, as if something invisible is pulling you backward, almost always this stagnation begins within your own mind. And the most curious thing is that, most of the time, you don't even realize it's happening. You simply wake up already tired, already drained of energy, already without that spark that seemed so strong the night before when you swore you'd wake up earlier, exercise, start a new project, send that overdue email. But the next day, the world feels heavier than it should. And without truly understanding why, you feel guilty, frustrated, thinking there's something wrong with you. But is there, really? This is where many people get it wrong. The problem isn't a lack of discipline, and certainly not laziness. The problem is that your brain is overstimulated to the point of losing its natural ability to motivate itself. And this happens in such a subtle way that you don't even realize you're being trained every single day to seek the path of least resistance, not because you want to, but because your brain has been conditioned to believe that the difficult path isn't worth the effort. Have you ever noticed how much easier it is to watch a short video than to read 2 pages of a book? Or how easy it is to scroll through a feed for hours without thinking about anything? This doesn't happen because you're weak. It happens because your dopamine levels have been hijacked by fast and constant stimuli. Every notification, every video, every update, all of it is designed to distract you. And when these small doses of pleasure accumulate, your brain starts to think that simple things, like focusing on an important task, require too much effort to be worthwhile. This isn't a conspiracy theory, it's neuroscience. Studies show that environments with an excess of stimuli drastically reduce your ability to maintain prolonged attention. In other words, the more accustomed you become to quick rewards, the harder it is to face tasks that don't have an immediate return. This explains why you try to start something important, and within a few minutes, you're already opening another tab without even realizing it. And this is exactly where many people's lives get stuck. Not from a lack of dreams, but from an excess of distraction. And to connect with this on a deeper level, think about how many times you've promised you'd do something important tomorrow. And when tomorrow arrived, you simply couldn't. Have you ever experienced that? And when this happens repeatedly, what's left is a feeling of inadequacy that erodes your confidence day after day. But what almost no one realizes is that this lack of energy isn't emotional, it's chemical. It's your brain trying to protect itself, trying to conserve energy, trying to maintain the pattern it believes is the safest. One of the most fascinating discoveries of modern neuroscience shows that the same area that processes pleasure also processes pain. They function like a scale. When you receive pleasure too easily, your brain tries to compensate by tipping the scale to the other side, generating a feeling of slight discomfort, restlessness, and even sadness for no apparent reason. Have you ever noticed that after spending too much time on social media, you don't feel entirely well? It's as if something inside you has been violated. That's the scale tipping toward pain. And this is where it all starts to make sense. Because after that dip, you try to feel good again. And what do? You seek out another quick stimulus. And this creates a cycle that leaves you increasingly tired, less motivated, and with the feeling that your life is stuck. But there is a way out. And it begins when you take control of what enters your brain. It doesn't mean disappearing from the internet, throwing away your phone, or becoming a monk. It means using the digital world with intention. Whenever you're about to open an app, ask yourself, why am I opening this now? This simple question already activates a part of the brain responsible for conscious decision-making. It's like turning off the autopilot. And one of the greatest examples of someone who understood this deeply is Bill Gates. Every year, he observes what he calls a think week, an entire week isolated without quick stimuli, just reading, thinking, and studying. During these weeks, he made some of the most important decisions that yielded billions of dollars. And it's no coincidence that he does this away from modern distractions. He understood that when you control what enters your mind, you control your destiny. It doesn't matter if you have money, status, or time. Mental clarity only appears when there's space for it to exist. But it hasn't always been this way historically. In the early 2000s, Japanese researchers discovered something alarming. Workers exposed to repetitive tasks full of visual stimuli began to lose the ability to focus on simple things. They weren't lazy. They weren't distracted. They were victims of an overloaded brain. This research showed that an excess of stimuli can literally rob you of your ability to think clearly. And when you realize this, everything changes. Because you finally understand that your stagnation isn't a lack of strength, but a lack of inner silence. Now, for those of you listening to me, I want you to take a quick pause, a small pattern interrupt. Look at your hands. Really, look now. Are they holding a phone? Are they resting on a keyboard? Now think. At what point in your life did you start to feel so anxious when left without stimulus for a few seconds? This reveals more about your brain than any psychological test. And that's precisely why, to unlock your life in the coming weeks, you need to start by reducing the excess noise. It's not about cutting everything out. It's about balancing. If you reduce the input of stimuli even a little, your brain returns to its natural state, a state where focus, clarity, and motivation appear spontaneously, without exaggerated effort. If you dedicate a few minutes a day to consuming content with purpose, reading something that teaches you, listening to something that inspires you, writing down your thoughts, you begin to reprogram your brain. And when you do this, the feeling of being stuck starts to disappear because you stop being led by the world and begin to lead your own mind. And when you do this consistently, even for just a few minutes a day, something powerful happens. For the first time in a long time, you feel like you're back in control. If there's one thing few people realize, it's how directly the body influences how the mind works. Sometimes you think you're stuck emotionally, mentally, or spiritually. But the truth is, your body is simply exhausted. When you go for days, weeks, or even months without truly moving, without activating your circulation, without minimally challenging your muscles, your brain interprets this as a silent state of alert. It starts to conserve energy in the areas you need most: clarity, focus, and motivation. And when this happens, even the simplest tasks begin to feel too heavy. Have you ever noticed how, on days when you sleep poorly or stay sedentary all day, everything feels harder? As if the world slows down a bit. That's not psychological, it's physiological. There's a deep connection between body and mind, deeper than most imagine. Research shows that small doses of movement increase brain oxygenation, improve mood, regulate hormones, and reduce that mental fog that makes you feel unproductive. It's not about becoming an athlete. It's not about running marathons. It's about activating the biological machine that carries everything you dream of building. If the body gets stuck, life gets stuck with it. It's that simple. And perhaps you've never stopped to consider that your mental blockage might be coming precisely from what you're not doing with your body. Humans weren't designed to spend hours upon hours sitting, staring at screens, unknowingly holding their breath. When you move, even for just a few minutes, something starts to align within you. And this isn't romanticizing it. It's pure chemistry. Your brain releases indirect dopamine, serotonin, norepinephrine, all substances that improve motivation, mental lightness, and your ability to see solutions where there was once only confusion. And perhaps you've already felt this without realizing it. That moment when you're cornered by problems, You go for a walk for 10 minutes, and suddenly something clears in your head. It's as if your thoughts have become unstuck, as if a door has opened. This happens because the body activated a system that the brain alone couldn't activate in that state. Movement creates movement in the mind. But here's an important question. How many days of your life do you spend completely still, waiting for your mind to solve everything on its own? How many times do you blame your lack of focus, when in reality the problem was your sedentary lifestyle? Sometimes, what you call procrastination is just your body begging for energy. Sometimes what you call anxiety is just your nervous system trying to compensate for a lack of oxygen and circulation. And sometimes, what you call laziness is just a brain too tired to function correctly. To truly grasp the significance of this, consider the tragic case of Nikola Tesla, one of the most brilliant minds who ever lived, a man with ideas far ahead of his time, yet who completely neglected his own body. He worked all night without sleep, ignored proper nutrition, physical activity, and rest. The result? He suffered multiple psychological and physical breakdowns throughout his life. A genius, a man rich in revolutionary ideas, but ultimately defeated by his own body. This clearly shows that no matter how powerful your mind is, without a healthy body, it simply cannot sustain the weight of its own brilliance. This isn't about comparing your life to his, but rather understanding what happens when you demand too much of your mind and not enough of your body. And while Tesla represents an extreme case, science confirms this with real data. In 2012, American researchers analyzed war veterans suffering from anxiety, insomnia, and a lack of mental clarity. Many were completely emotionally stuck. But when they started practicing simple exercises, such as light walks, the improvement was astonishing. A 40% reduction in symptoms, increased cognitive clarity, more energy, and a greater capacity to make decisions. It wasn't magic, it was movement. And if that worked for people in extreme situations, why wouldn't it work for you in a normal routine? Now, let me offer you a little pattern interrupt. If you can, stand up for a moment, roll your shoulders, rotate your neck, take a deep breath, and slowly exhale. This might seem trivial, but did you notice how just that simple act changed how your body feels? Did it already slightly reorganize your thoughts? Sometimes that's all your brain needs, a signal that you're not stagnant, that you are alive, that you are present. And this simple gesture, repeated daily, can be the first step to unlocking your life in just a few weeks. And the most important thing to understand is that you don't need to start big. You just need to start. 10 minutes a day already creates real changes in your brain. Walking, stretching, taking the stairs, dancing, moving in any way. It doesn't matter how. Your body is the key that unlocks the door for your mind to function as it should. And when your body responds, motivation appears. Clarity appears. The will to act returns. Everything that once seemed heavy begins to feel lighter, because now you have the energy to truly engage with life, not just survive it. You aren't stuck because your mind isn't working. You are stuck because your body isn't being utilized as the engine it was meant to be. And when you activate that engine, everything around you starts to move along with it. That's how things begin to change. When you think of the word stuck, you might imagine an external block, a colossal obstacle, something entirely beyond your control. But in reality, much of what truly holds you back lies within how you interpret your own limits. The way you think about yourself often weighs more heavily than what you are actually capable of doing. And perhaps you felt this before. That inner voice telling you that you weren't born for certain things, that you don't have enough talent, that you lack the capability, that you don't possess the gift. As if life were a territory divided between those who can and those who cannot. But have you noticed that this narrative only appears when you're about to try something that truly matters? It's astonishing how the mind conjures up stories even before you've had a chance to experience anything. And worse, it creates these narratives with such strong conviction that you believe them to be facts. How many times have you given up on something without truly trying? How many times have you allowed an isolated mistake to define your view of what you are capable of doing? It's as if every frustrated attempt were a sentence, a harsh reminder that you weren't meant for that. And the cruelest part is that this repeats so often that it becomes a habit. It becomes an identity. It becomes a label you unknowingly stick on yourself. But there's a simple shift that can start to turn this game around, something science has called a growth mindset. The idea that instead of viewing your difficulties as permanent characteristics, you begin to see them as skills in development. And this small change starts with one word that can completely transform how you interpret your challenges. Yet. I can't. Yet. I'm not good at this. Yet. I haven't learned. Yet. This simple word removes the sting of failure and transforms every mistake into a stepping stone, every setback into a process. Suddenly, what seemed impossible simply becomes something that hasn't happened yet. And perhaps you don't realize the full power of this until you recall situations where you gave up too soon. Have you ever had that moment where you thought, I'm not good with numbers, I'm not good at learning languages, I'll never understand this kind of thing? But is that really true? Or did you just not try hard enough because someone, at some point, convinced you that it wasn't for you? How many dreams die this way without ever truly having a chance to be born? Research by Dr. Carol Dweck shows that people with a growth mindset achieve better academic, professional, and even financial results simply because they allow themselves to keep trying. And perhaps you're wondering, why does this make such a difference? Because when you believe you can learn, you try again. When you believe you can improve, you persist a little longer. When you believe you're not incapable, merely inexperienced, you keep moving forward. And it is precisely this persistence that creates new connections in the brain, new skills, new opportunities. It's not magic. It's neuroplasticity. It's biology working in your favor. And to illustrate the strength of this process, just remember Thomas Edison. While many people in the world would give up after 3 attempts, 5 attempts, 20 attempts, he continued for over 1,000. 1,000 attempts. Do you realize what that means? A man spending years facing failure after failure without letting it define who he was. And when asked how he endured so much failure, he responded with an almost absurd calmness. I have not failed 1,000 times. I have simply found 1,000 ways that won't work. He wasn't magic. He simply had what most abandon in the first few minutes, the capacity to keep trying. Now, think with me. How many things in your life did you give up on too soon? How many better versions of yourself were left behind because you believed you lacked talent? How many doors did you leave unopened because you thought you weren't capable of walking through them? Perhaps the truth is that you haven't failed. You just haven't reached your yet. And to bring this into the real world in an emotional and human way, there's a case from American education that left its mark on generations. In 1983, a public school in Chicago implemented a different grading system. When a student didn't reach the expected level in a subject, they didn't receive an F, the infamous fail. They received the grade, not yet. The impact was so great that dropout rates fell and overall performance increased. Students who previously gave up easily began to try again, simply because they understood they were in process, not in failure. And if 10-year-old children could change their results because of this simple mindset shift, why couldn't you? And to make this even more real, let me offer you a different kind of invitation, almost a little provocation. Think of something you'd like to do, but have avoided because you think you're not capable. Some skill you've always wanted, some change you've never started, some dream that's been tucked away in a drawer because it seemed too big for you. Now imagine that you decided to try for just 2 weeks, every day, even if only for a few minutes. Imagine that during these days, whenever your mind said, "I can't," you replied, "I can't yet." Seems too simple to work, right? But I guarantee you, 2 weeks of thinking like this will already start to reprogram your mind, because your brain learns by what you repeat. And when you repeat that you are in process, it starts to believe it. And before you continue, take a small pause with me. Think about something you abandoned because you believed you were incapable. Just think. Don't speak, don't write, just think. Now ask yourself, what if the problem was never a lack of ability, but rather a lack of patience with your own process? What if you haven't failed? You just haven't reached your yet. This thought alone changes everything. Because the moment you understand that you can learn, that you can improve, that you can develop, you unlock a dormant part of your mind. And when that part awakens, your whole life starts to move again. Not because it got easier, but because you got stronger. The unlocking of your life doesn't start in your body, nor in your environment, nor in your circumstances. It starts with the kind of story you choose to believe about yourself. And when that story changes, everything changes with it. Before you continue your day, let me tell you something important. If at any point in this video you felt that some part of it spoke directly to you, there's a good chance that someone you know is going through the same thing. So, if a name comes to mind right now, that person who might be stuck, lost, unmotivated, share this video with them. Sometimes a simple message arrives at just the right time and changes everything. And of course, thank you for staying with me this far. Truly. This shows that you are committed to your own growth, and that already puts you ahead of many people. If this content helped you in any way, please hit the like button, as that helps me reach more people just like you. Subscribe to the channel to continue this journey with me. There's so much more coming. And rest assured, I'll see you in the next video.